Fans, we are back live with another edition of the Cheap Heat Productions Wrestling Podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling. Morris will be joining us in just a minute, but we are here to interview a man whose career I am very familiar with and a fan of, a man who made his mark primarily, but not extensively, exclusively, with World Championship Wrestling. And I would be speaking about the one and only Joe Gomez. Joe, thanks so much for coming on today.
Honored to be here. Thanks for having me, my friend.
I think it's helpful for the fans to get the perspective of how you first got involved with the business by asking if you were a fan growing up, and if so, did you follow any particular territories or companies?
Oh gosh, yes. I was, I'm a native Floridian, so obviously I followed Florida Championship Wrestling. It was on every Saturday night on Channel 6 and 33, and the Dean, Gordon Soley, and Dusty Rhodes, of course, Rocky Soulman Johnson, Steve Kern, Mike Graham. Nate himself when he would be the touring champion and come through the territory, Barry Windham, pretty much that whole Florida crew, and a little bit of Georgia as well, but mostly Florida Championship Wrestling. Yeah.
Did you have a moment in time when you decided, you know what, I'm going to pursue this as a career, or how did that
Thomas Newsom?
No, actually, that's funny. I was always a huge fan of it. Played baseball and football through high school, football in college, but I never really anticipated finding a career, shall we say, in wrestling. I didn't know what avenues to take. I knew you had to go to wrestling school, but of course, I always heard the legend of Hulkster when he went down to Hiro Matsuda and they broke his ankle. So I wasn't about to go through any of that. So it wasn't until I actually met Dusty Rhodes at a wedding, Lightning Lou Perez, a local guy here in Florida, Tampa. And, I guess I just had a look that they liked or thought they could make money with, and asked if I ever was interested in becoming a professional wrestler. And of course I was like, out of my mind. And, they set it up for me to go down there and train at the Armory. I'm sorry, not the Armory, at the Albany Street, the old Sportatorium. There's so many of those classic, Saturday matches that I watched were on. And actually, when I was in high school, my senior year, I would go and, wave at the camera, walk by it, and tell my friends down in Miami, where I grew up, I'm on wrestling, watch wrestling, So just a lot of great memories in that building. And that's where I broke in. Steve Kern trained me there, Mike Graham, and Ron Slinker, God rest his soul.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you about that. We hear a lot about, especially the old school training, but from Florida. You mentioned Matsuda and what happened to some of the individuals that tried to break into the business. Off, that sort of thing. What was your experience like in that regard?
Well, I'd say it was nowhere near as difficult as a lot of the other guys went through. Guys that were probably my one generation before me. We were stretched. Don't get me wrong, and put in the sugar hold, and stretched until we screamed or what have you. But we weren't beaten anywhere near as bad as those guys. I mean, we paid certain dues, but nothing like the generation that preceded me. It was tough. But it was a lot of fun, a lot of camaraderie, and definitely one of the most fun times I had in my life. You're young, you're as strong and in the best shape you're ever going to be in. And, you're chasing your dreams with your guys, and, just the 4-hour car ride, because it was throughout the state of Florida, the 3 and 4 hour car rides and the camaraderie that you build on those. Sometimes there'd be a veteran like a Bob Roop or a Kevin Sullivan or Mike Graham, my first tag team partner, or Steve Kern. And, we'd go to the Bahamas once a month. That was a regular part of the territory. So those were just tremendous times. Dick Slater, so we'd be able to, get some knowledge from those guys, some of the veterans that were there. And Rocky Johnson was regular there too. Scott McGee, a tremendous worker. So, there was a nice mixture of veterans like that, young guys like myself trying to make it in the industry, and we were able to, garner a lot of great advice, stories, camaraderie through those travels, and it was a great time. Truly, just different. Now everything is so, it's just now, you go to the performance center and it's great. There's never been anything like it. It's like going to Miami Dolphins and Davie training camp, or the Bucks here in Tampa, but it's just still not the same. That gritty, no air conditioning, Albany Street and the Sportatorium on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. and it was 100 degrees in there. There's no shower, no air conditioning. So you kind of long for those days as well.
Excellent. We're joined by Mr. Cheap Heat himself, all the way over in Ireland. Morris, welcome to your own show, sir.
Late for my own show. There you go. Sorry.
5 minutes at the most. Good to have you, sir.
We were just getting into Joe's experience, breaking into the business and his training process. If you want to ask him from there.
Yeah, I was reading that you were trained, Joe, by Steve Kern, who we've previously had on the show as well. I'm just wondering, what did you learn from Steve?
I'd probably say the biggest thing that Steve taught us, in addition to the physical aspects of what the business demands, I remember one of the first things: look at yourself in your underwear in front of the mirror and ask yourself, would you pay money to see yourself? So those were one of the first lessons he taught us, and along with just respect, because Steve has such a tremendous amount of respect for the business, and that was the one overriding principle I'd say that he really taught us is, every time you walk into a locker room, you shake hands, you introduce yourself, even if they know you, you pay your respects to the ones that came before you. And I think that was probably the biggest thing that I took from the business, and why I was able to garner a lot of tremendous friendships through the years, because I always paid proper respect to the business and the guys that I shared the ring with as well. And Steve was really, really good about that. And, and just really savor and really take advantage of the time that you have in the business, because you never know how long it's going to last. And if you're lucky enough to make it to one of the federations, or if you're lucky enough to be on television, or, whatever your goals are, but to always just savor it and really don't take it for granted. And he was really good about that.
You touched on the fact that Mike Graham was your first tag team partner, and you had a successful championship team with him. Because
of him. Let me just preface that. I was a rookie and green as goose, and he was just so easy to learn from, just a fountain of information.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask, though, about your transition from there to WCW at the start with respect to your signing and how that came about.
Oh, that's I was telling that story today at lunch, actually, with some judges and my best friend. Ole Anderson, excuse me, was in charge at that time, and he was scouting for talent, and he'd come by here occasionally, but the Nasty Boys were here. Mike and Steve had brought Brian and Jerry here from Minnesota, their hometown. And let's just say Tampa, Clearwater hasn't really been the same since the Nasties came. But so we had a program with them, and I was probably married to them for 2 or 3 months with Mike, which meant heat on the kid. Mike Graham makes a hot tag, boom, he jumps through the ropes, boom, boom. They fly around for him, but 20 minutes, they were just killing me. So that was a real good learning experience and a lot of fun. And I'm still really good friends with Brian and Jerry to this day. But yeah, it was you just learned so much from them. And when you're working the same guys in 4 or 5 towns in a territory, the matches, tend to be the same, or none of us really that experienced back then to know to change them. And this is before the internet, of course, so nobody knew that they were seeing the same thing that they saw 30 miles ago or the night prior. So it was just a really good learning experience. And basically I learned how to sell And but working with Mike Graham, I did get to learn a lot. You know, he was just so smooth in the ring, and everything he did meant something. And it was for a reason. And just a tremendous wrestler. And you know, he was a good friend to all the younger guys. And you know, I think about him quite often. Actually, he was a good man, good friend.
So through Mike, you made the connection with WCW and Ole?
I would say yes, because, well, I mean, you know, the tag team was obviously meant for me to, you know, Mike was, you know, finishing up pretty much. You know, he was in the latter part of his career, and it was to polish me up and to teach me and to give me the experience of working with a tremendously skilled worker like Mike. And I did learn somewhat. I only had about probably 20 matches here before Ole signed me, and I was definitely not ready to be in WCW. Definitely not ready for that. But I had a certain look, I guess, and I had good size, and I was a good athlete. So they thought they could make money, you know. So they flew me up to Atlanta, and God, I never forget. I was calling Kern from Ole's office. We're on the 13th floor of the CNN Center, and I asked Steve, "Man, they want to give me a contract. You think I should sign?" And you know, Kern, heck yeah, you never know if you're going to get another shot at it, which obviously is true. So I signed, and they put me on a plane, literally, right, like within the hour, to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where I was to wrestle the Iron Sheik, former WWE champion. And, you know, again, he was on the latter part of his career. You know, the injuries had really taken their toll on Sheiky. And, you know, he was living in Atlanta at the time, a little bit south of the airport. So it was a good way for him to continue in the business and, you know, be closer to home. So I see him and Al Green, who was a guy from Tampa as well, who was teaming up with Kevin Nash as the Master Blasters. And I would be married to them for a couple of months upon my arrival at WCW. So, you know, I went with them and went about, you know, checked in. They showed me the ropes of being on the road. I literally had no idea. And wrestled the Sheik that night in Myrtle Beach. And I actually went over on the Sheik. Quite unbelievable honor for me. You know, I thought he was going to be hot about it, but he couldn't have been more professional or nicer. Just really a great guy. And again, another guy I missed dearly because he was just tremendous with the younger guys and wanting to teach us how to do something, when to do something, just very giving. And, you know, that always meant a lot to us, a former WWE champion, being that, you know, giving in the business, just tremendous. So from there, just, you know, I met Rick and Arn, and, you know, Sid Vicious was there. I spent some time with him on the road, and Rick and Arn kind of took me under their wing after some pretty crazy stories on the road. And, you know, I made $52,000 my first year, and my parents gave me a credit card. So I put all the expenses on there and, you know, make it easier for the accountant. Because I was young. I was like 20 years old, I think. 22 maybe. And that was before Rick taught me to get my draws every night. Because back then, I think we can get $300 cash a night. So I'm like, oh, this is great. You know, we always have cash on us and everything. Until I realized they were taking out of our checks. So at the end of the week, you know, we would have like I would have like $250 check. You know, Rick could take a $5,000 draw a night if he wanted because he was paid on the house. So it was just a lot of learning experiences, and I really didn't get it. You know, everything was happening so fast around me, and for me to be on the road with, you know, two of my idols, you know, Rick, actually three, Rick, Arn, and Barry, it was really overwhelming for me, to say the least. So I didn't apply myself like I should have, to be quite honest. I should have, you know, put more into the business. You know, in terms of the matches and practicing. We didn't have the power plant back then. But if that's one thing I guess I would have a regret, it's not really applying myself. But, you know, I had other businesses too. I had a bar restaurant called Cherry's in Tampa, Ybor City. It was quite successful and very popular. So I was trying to split myself up a little bit, you know, business-wise. So, and definitely the wrestling is what lagged in that regard. So, but everything else, everything's great. I had a great couple of years there as Alan Iron Eagle. Then I had a death in the family. They didn't renew my contract, nor should they have, mind you. I definitely did not progress like I should have, or they predicted. Went home to take care of that. My mother had died, which was really traumatic for me. I was an adopted only kid. And so I came home, and, my dad had helped me open up my first business called Cherries in Ybor City. Wildly successful bar restaurant we had for 20 years there. So I came home to be with my parents, be with my father at this really, really tough time. And our relationship was never better. And, I was home with all my friends. I'm so blessed to have just an inordinate amount of friends in Tampa. And it was good. It was a good period of time.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Barry Horowitz there, Joe. I just want to get your thoughts on Barry and the career he's had. We always kind of have a discussion on this show that, he should be honored in some kind of Hall of Fame capacity for the career he's had.
Absolutely.
What's your opinion on that?
Is the Brooklyn Brawler, is Steve in the Hall of Fame, WWE, I believe?
No.
Okay. Well, yeah, then, I mean, both those guys, SD Jones, Barry Horowitz, those guys that enabled the top guys to shine and did their job and did it. Barry took I traveled with Barry, a little bit, as you go through when you're young and in a territory, you kind of see who you mesh with. And I was still young and wild, and Barry was, probably 38 at the time, I would have to guess, and maybe 30, 32, but he was very disciplined, exacting on his diet, exacting on his training. He would always have to put his lotion on at night before he went to bed, but very, particular. His gear was always meticulous. His tan was always right. He always got his training in, and he was definitely one of the guys who was most overlooked, perhaps, or underrated. I don't know, but I think the bookers appreciate him because they always put him with the top guys because they knew they would get a great match out of him. But maybe he didn't get his recognition, as you said, Hall of Fame, perhaps, or any other adulation. But yeah, for the guys that know the business, Barry Horowitz was tremendous. I mean, you always knew you were going to get great work out of him. He always dressed like a professional, always carried himself like a professional. His ring gear was always spotless and meticulous. He was just a pro's pro. The only thing I can say about him. And a good guy, very good guy.
You just got a shout out there from Casey Thompson, who's watching, by the way.
Casey is a dear friend. I say threw the best drop kick I ever saw when we were working the indie show somewhere in Florida. Oh my God. But yeah, Casey's a great guy and a dear friend. And his son's a tremendous amateur, going through some injury problems now, but a tremendous amateur wrestler, like Olympic level.
You touched on earlier, Joe, about some of the matches that you had with the Horsemen, the unit involving Barry and, of course, Sid and Rick and Arn. What was that like for a new guy in the business to have that kind of experience in ring with, some of the best that ever did it?
For me, it was. For me, I apologize. For me, it was like. I guess batting against Roger Clemens. I actually never had a solo match, Rick. Had one or two with Arn for the TV title, but never had a solo match with Rick. But got to tag with him and, let's see what you got, kid. And I was just like, oh my God. I was starstruck. I was excited, whatever adjective you can come up with. And it was just tremendous. These guys were just great guys. Everything you see about them on TV, they are larger than life. They live their gimmick, which is why they became, the greatest. After I lost my parents, first my mother and my father, I spent 5 or 6 Christmases with both Rick and Arn in Charlotte, because they're like, Chief, we don't want you to be alone, boom, boom, boom. And just great guys, great friends. They really were. They made me an integral part of their families, and that was a huge compliment for me. So just to be able to be in the ring and to travel with them and, have those experiences, for me, it was priceless.
Yeah, Joe, we were just looking through your database there, and you have one listed match for WWF in 96 against the Godwins with the Brooklyn Brawler. How did that come about, that appearance with WWF?
Well, I think at that time I was getting offered to go back to work. My father had died, and I had a couple restaurants at the time, but I had them situated where I could go in and out of town, and some other friends in the business working on. Oh, Chief, why don't you come back to work? And so Henry, I can't remember which guy it was, but Dennis Knight, I know you guys remember him, Tex Slazenger in
Midian.
WCW, Midian, yes, and he was also a Godwin. But they had asked me to come out and do a match, and basically a tryout match. There's no way I was prepared, even though I think WCW had a better work rate. There's no way I was prepared for WWE. I think their characters were just so larger than life, everything, and my character was the one that gave me, Desperado Joe Gomez, was something Jimmy Hart put together, and he really was behind it and thought it would do well, but it wasn't developed enough. You know what I mean? And I was pretty. I just don't think I took the business as much as I should have, and really ran with it, developed it, and put everything I did. And again, not to make an excuse, more of an explanation. I did have a couple restaurants that were doing very well, and a tanning salon. I had other businesses, and that kind of it splinters you. I don't care how you have it set up. You're still going to worry about it. You're going to want to know, hey, what were the numbers, this and this and this, and you're trying to do other things. And wrestling is something that's got to be your mistress, your wife, your lover, your best friend, everything. If you're going to be of any, Stone Cold or anything, or Barry Horowitz. Barry Horowitz was totally invested in his business, from his diet to his sleep regimen, to his training, to his tanning, to his supplements. My God, he carried like 30 bottles with him, and I'm running around with Rick and Arn and Barry. And needless to say, that wasn't probably my number one priority. So, and like I said earlier, in that regard, I am somewhat, that would definitely be a regret I had. I'm at the power plant, ostensibly going through my drills when they hired me back, and Kevin Sullivan's my boss and a very good, dear friend. But he would call and say, get me at the power plant, pick us up at 5 o'clock at the towers. And I'm like, but Kevin, I got to stay here. He cursed me. Okay, you're going out of town at 7. Pick us up here. So I'd go with them. And, I did learn from them for those car rides with, Paul Orndorff, Rick and Arn and Barry and Kevin and Jimmy Hart. And just, guys that have forgotten more than I'll ever know. But at the same time, I wasn't, putting the time in the ring that I should have. So, and that is a regret I'll have. And, Eric was really gracious about it. I got to say, he paid me really good money, and he would tell me, kid, can't you just get abs? And he was really good about it, I got to say. So, but yeah, being with those guys was just a tremendous time. And, it was such an opportunity to learn. And I took maybe advantage of half of it. But I didn't really, like I should have, no matter what, if we'd be out all night, Nate would be up at 6 a.m. on the treadmill at the highest level for an hour. No two ways about it. Arn would sleep in, but Rick was on that treadmill, fastidious about that, about his diet and everything. Drank like a son of a gun, but his diet was always spot on. So, there was things that I should have taken from them that I didn't. Probably because I was still starstruck, just being friends with them and being, on the road with them. So.
I wanted to ask you about working with Austin in '92. Another guy who was fairly new to the business at that point in time. Did you get any sort of vibe from him that of the greatness that was to come?
Looking back, you could say that, but I guess anybody could say that, really. But you could tell he was just intense. And he was definitely focused on his business, being the wrestling business and making it and doing whatever it took and being, just more serious, I guess, than myself. I guess I had a lackadaisical somewhat attitude about it. Maybe because I had success in other ventures. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, you could definitely tell the guys that more locked in. He was definitely locked in. Brian Pillman locked in. He would always tell me white is death, meaning rice or bread or pasta and everything else. I just didn't adhere to it like he did. He, again, another guy, fastidious about his diet, just really, really, really serious about everything it took to make it as a champ. And if you look at the guys that did that, there's a common thread. So, yeah, I was really lucky to be around those guys. And I think I took it and maybe used it in my regular life or my civilian life, however you want to call it, in other ways. But it's just a shame that I didn't do it in the wrestling business. But, other people always tell me, oh, I think we always end up where we're supposed to be. So maybe that's true. I've been really blessed. I've got a great life, a lot of great friends that I met through the business, and I'm very thankful for that. So I probably wouldn't change anything, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like when you look at things and you see guys that might go all in on the wrestling business, then maybe get caught up in the party lifestyle, maybe put all their eggs in one basket and then end up in a difficult situation. Like if you look back on what you done, you were very clever.
Well, and thank you so much for the kind words. I really appreciate that. You have no idea. I don't know about me being that clever, but I was surrounded by smarter people than I. And I think I took that advice, thank God, for once, to purchase real estate when my dear friend Boney advised me to, and I was so blessed with that. To open up a funding company when one of my attorneys that I work with just threw off a comment, hey, my investigator made, this last year, you should look at that. And I did, but I tweaked it and changed it around a little bit and, used some of the principles that I learned in the hospitality industry. But thank you. But no, I think I've just been pretty blessed to have a lot of great people around me. And, your family, your friends, and your health. Those are the only things that really matter. I've learned that. And I've been very blessed to have all of them. So
this may be a deep cut, Joe, but as a Canadian, we had an individual by the name of Sadistic Steve Strong, Steve DeSalvo. He worked WCW as Minotaur.
Oh, yeah.
You worked him. I just wanted to know because
I bet that had to be horrible. I haven't seen the match since it occurred, 25. Oh, God, that had to be horrible. Not a knock on Steve. I'm talking to myself. Oh,
yeah, it was actually entertaining. I just wanted to know because he's kind of disappeared off the radar. If you had any more, I know it's a deep cut, but did you have any interactions with him of note or how that match went?
No, that's actually a good question because I have so many good friends that are from Toronto and Canada. They're coming here next week to visit. George Terzis, Anthony Corelli, Santino Morella.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a lot of friends from Canada, Jay and Adam, Jay's over in AEW now. So I've got a lot of good friends from there. But no, I haven't seen him. He was a neat guy, I remember. But beyond working that match, maybe a handful of occasions. I don't think he was full time with WCW, so I think we only crossed paths a couple times. But oh God, I'm sure that match was a stinker on my part.
It's on YouTube, so I'd encourage the fans to check it out. Quite the character, and I think you did your job very well.
Well, thank you. That was a character. I remember that. The half man, half bull. Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. We'll send it to you later.
Almost up there with Arachnid Man. Remember that when Brad Armstrong did the Spider-Man ripoff? Oh,
yes. That wasn't a intellectual property disaster, was it? Do you know why they bothered to actually put that character on TV, given the inevitable outcome?
Right? Yeah. Well, I'll give him this. It was better than Candyman. Remember when they had him passing out candy? Oh, and we're talking about one of the best workers of my generation. I mean, that guy was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching him and Steve Regal go probably half an hour once at the power plant, didn't call a spot, just went in there and just, it was beautiful. It was like poetry, I mean, they were that good and that smooth and that Just it was like watching Flair and Steamboat, 89. Yeah, Brad was he was tremendous talent. The whole Armstrong family, those are some working boys.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever get any memorable advice from Eric Bischoff, Joe, over the years?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, let me tell you, Eric. I know he has his detractors and everything, but he was always really good to me. I mean, he would always tell me, "Kid, you got $1 million look. Can't you just get abs?" And it just didn't. And God, I remember Hall and Nash would, always try to help me out and give me some advice and break balls a little bit too. Great guys. But yeah, Eric did. He gave me a lot of good business advice that I took to heart. And he told me, he goes, "Listen, I get it, Joe." He goes, "I know you have other ventures," and he goes, "And I want you to do that." He never discouraged me from doing other things, but I think I let him down by not giving him his money's worth that he was paying me for whatever reason. And he and Kevin both. Kevin was great to me. Kevin hired me twice, offered me a third job that I declined to take at the time. But they were both really good to me and both high on me for whatever reason. And if anything, I let them down. But yeah, Eric would always give me good advice and, just tell me, "Listen, if you could do this, this, and this, make X amount here, X amount here, X amount here, you're doing great. It doesn't have to all come from one revenue stream." And I think he was just, telling me it's okay for you to do other things, but I needed to be more attuned to what I was supposed to be doing in the ring as well, to be fair to him.
Some of the fans on social media have asked about your team with another guy lost too soon, that being the Renegade, and how that came together. And it appeared, given your TV time and exposure, that the office had some plans for you with that team. Can you tell us about that whole situation, please?
Yeah, Rick was a great guy, and ironically, he was a Tampa guy as well. I knew Rick back in the bar days when I was bouncing, and he was in the entertainment industry here in Tampa. Just a really, really nice guy. And lo and behold, we meet like 4 or 5 years later in the wrestling industry. And I think Jimmy Hart was one that kind of pushed us to be put together as a tag team. Jimmy was always real high on me. God knows why. And Renegade and Rick. So he put us together as a team, and it was kind of up to us, to work at it probably more, but it was really hard to break through that ceiling at the time in WCW. I mean, you had so many Hall of Famers, from Macho to Scott to Kevin to Hulkster himself to Rick to Arn to the Steiner brothers, Harlem Heat. I mean, it was just insane how much talent there was at that time in both companies. So the ceiling was hard to break. And you had some guys, another guy that, I never quite got, because his knowledge of the business, tremendous. He really had a good mind for the business and loved the business, very passionate about it. Disco Inferno. Disco always looked great. He took a gimmick and made the best out of it that you could. His body, he always kept himself in great shape. Still looks great. And his work was good. So, but again, there's a guy, and I think that he just got stuck in that comedic role, but he could go, when he wanted to. They gave him a couple opportunities to go 20 plus, and he could really go. But I think they just took him as that comedic role, and he kind of acted that way sometimes, popping his head in the booking committee, just get heat, and Kevin would throw a shoe at him or something, But really good guy. And I always thought his skill was, really, really evident. But we were given opportunity. They were supposed to do something with the Horsemen. They ran an angle that was supposed to be a pretty good angle. I ended up wrestling Mongo in Bash to the Beach, I think 96 or 97. It was whenever, actually it was when the NWO really debuted, when Hulk came out and turned heel. So whatever year that was. And, but building up to that, they had a thing where I guess Rick or I went to go protect Deborah's honor, and boom, boom, boom. They left us laying there, Rick and Arn, I believe Mongo or Barry, but the Horsemen. And they never really but back then, so much was being rewritten on the fly. Like they had an angle for Rick and I against the Horsemen. We were going to get a whole segment on Raw on Nitro, and let's say if Scott or Kevin had a problem with what was written, and then Hulk, obviously he had creative control, or if DDP didn't like something, so Kevin literally would have to rewrite the show on the fly. I mean, it was just crazy the pressure he was under. So I think that led to a lot of stuff that maybe they had planned for the younger guys, myself or Disco or Hoovy, Ray, who was God unbelievable. And I think a lot of that stuff got left by the wayside just because you had so many top guys that were drawing and that were being paid exorbitant amounts of money. So, it's up to us, though. Don't get me wrong. They give us a platform to break that glass ceiling. So it's up to us to do that, to be compelling enough to make the fans demand, to see us. But it was tough to get TV time back then. So that whole angle got, and maybe it could have gone somewhere, maybe not. I don't know. But being able to work with Horseman and as green as Rick and I were, maybe that would have elevated us. Maybe that would have given us, the confidence in our own abilities to be able to work at that level. I don't know. But again, for those reasons, the angle got squashed, and it just led to Mongo and I doing a blow off at Bastion Beach. Mm-hmm. And so, it happens. It's just one of those things.
You touched on the creative control there, Joe. Do you ever remember a moment where someone, say, threw their toys out of the pram to get something written their own way or anything like that?
Oh God, yeah. Because I was traveling with Kevin, and and we were close actually when he and Nancy broke up. He lived at my house in Florida for like probably 6 months, and met his future wife there. So yeah, and you would just see the stress eating at him. And then when he booked that old angle, with Benoit and life imitated art, so to speak, and everything else, you can just see the intense pressure he was under. And I mean, he blew his stack a couple of times. I'm really not at liberty to discuss, but I don't know how he held together as long as he did. I mean, literally, it would be not to knock anybody, because you have to protect yourself. That's one thing I was really guilty of in the business as a young kid. I let them call the matches for me. I thought I was being respectful, and I was, but you have to get your own. You have to look out for yourself in that industry, or they'll eat you alive. And it's not really an evil thing, or, I got to do this to step over this young kid or whatever. It's just, you have to protect yourself, and you got to get yours in. I know that now. Orndorff would tell me it takes about 1,000 matches till that light bulb goes off. And I agree, till you really get it. So, you would see, maybe one guy, not to name any names, he has an issue with it. Well, he's got a creative control contract clause. Well, the guy he was supposed to work, he's got a problem in it, but he's best friends with Eric. So he goes to Eric, and then it goes down the line. But somebody's got to do a job. And it was just hard when you had so much talent there and so many people that were making so much money. So, yeah. I mean, you always knew WWE had everything planned out. They had theirs written out months, weeks, if not months in advance. I've literally seen Kevin probably have to redo Nitro 10, 15 times. They'd have the whole format done. Oh, that was good, brother. He and his booking committee. And then somebody'd come in the office 20 minutes before TV, and you have to rewrite it again. And that led to, lack of continuity. Sometimes it would leave holes in the storyline. And I think that was probably one of our biggest problems in WCW, and why we ended up losing the overall fight.
Yeah, very good.
One of the my personal favorite pay-per-views was the Hog Wild extravaganza in Sturgis, and I know you had a match against the Dungeon of Doom there, and I just wanted to get your memories of that whole incredible experience. No doubt,
it really was, and just being a curtain jerker, you know, first, second, third match guy, you know, I was still there with all the guys, and the camaraderie was really good on that. I wasn't a motorcycle rider, although I may look like it, but I never rode a motorcycle. That was all Eric and Scotty Steiner, Rick, DDP. I'm sure Goldberg, I believe Bill bought his. A lot of the guys brought theirs. So they actually drove their motorcycles pretty much cross country. Now they had a support team, you know, vans, trailers, and everything with it. Where we flew in, and I remember we had to stay at the Black Hills, South Dakota, but we had to stay pretty far from the actual event in Sturgis because it was such a sold out, crazy venue. I mean, we must have stayed an hour and a half. They had huge, you know, the tour buses for us to drive us in town, and it was crazy. It was 500,000 people, and it wasn't like lawless or crazy like people think. Everybody was really cool, and everybody was just having fun. It was hot as heck. I remember because we had to do the ring on top of a hill, and it was surrounded by motorcycles. So guys are sitting on their choppers, just revving it up, and you're, you know, in the ring waiting for the TV. And that mat was so hot. I'll never forget that. And you know, you're trying to call out spots out there, and they're you can even hear yourself think. It was crazy, but a really neat. That's one thing Eric thought outside the box, and I thought that was a really neat dynamic, you know, to have it like that. You know, when he would take the Nitros and we would go tour across the country, and because it was so over with the college kids, I mean, it was like, you know, you were touring with who would be back then, Blink 182, I don't know, something of that era, and it was really, really tremendous. You know, you'd have 30,000 college kids just going crazy for wrestling and introducing it to a whole new audience. And Hog Wild was kind of the same. You know, there was some crossover there with the wrestling and the Harley riding and the hardcore biker audience, but not that much really. But they really had a good time and got into it. So that was a lot of fun. It really was. Just that whole week experience was pretty cool.
Any notable memories or interactions with the Hulkster over the years, Joe?
Yeah, just a great guy. You know, I knew him from Tampa, and you know, he's a Clearwater guy. I'm a Tampa guy, but you know, we'd always known each other from the bar business or just out or dinner. We'd run into each other, and he was always very gracious, guarded. You know, you remember at the time he was probably one of the most recognizable people or figures in the world. You know, in his heyday. I mean, this guy was the real deal. But always a very nice guy. But like I said, guarded. You know, he had his inner circle of friends, and you know, I know a lot better now actually, and just a great guy. You know, he's been through a lot of stuff that probably would break most men, but he is just really very spiritual now and very positive and just a heck of a nice. I was actually one of the 30, 40 people maybe invited to a surprise 70th birthday party. You know, and it was very much an honor. But he had a heck of a party here in Tampa, had a great time, and just could not have been more just a great guy. I mean, it's really, really amazing. You know, you can see before he was nice, but it's kind of maybe superficial now. You know, hey kid, what's happening, brother? You know, one of those. But now he really is just a real, genuine, good human being, great guy.
One of the wrestling luminaries that speaks very highly of you today on his podcast is Jim Cornette, and I know that you had at least one match against Bobby and Stan as the Midnight Express. Just wanted to get your impressions of working with him in the ring and being around Mr. Cornette.
I love Jim Cornette, one of the greatest minds of our era by far. And just a great guy, you know, just a Southern guy. And, you know, I was real tight with Double A with Arn, and he and Corny were really tight. And you just have to respect Jimmy's knowledge and his passion for the business. And working with Bobby Eaton, who literally is one of the best human beings I've ever met in my life. Miss him dearly. He was Arn's neighbor in Charlotte. Whenever I'd go stay there with Arn, we'd go to Bobby's garage. And Oh man, he was, and not only that, just one of the most amazing workers. Could do anything. He dropped that Alabama Jam off you from 18 feet, then about probably like 12 feet in the air. Don't even feel it. Just unbelievable. Punches, unbelievable. Just everything Bobby did. He was really one of the best ever. Never got the credit for it. Stan, I worked with a lot. Stan's an awesome guy as well. Tremendous hand, tremendous worker. And just to be able to work with us, just watching how they interact and how they almost telepathically know what the other one's going to do. And obviously that comes with thousands and thousands of matches. And Corny always know, and it's hard because I tried to do that in England when I wrestled there. Act as a under a hood manager. That was the toughest thing ever. Knowing when to. You think but you really don't. And how to draw the crowd this way. And man, Corny's just a master at it. So yeah, to work with them, it's an education, literally. Anytime you're blessed enough to work with a guy like Jim Cornette, or Sweet Stan and Bobby Eaton, I mean, it's like taking a master's class in your profession. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
You alluded, Joe, earlier slightly to a few parties back in WCW. Is there anything, obviously, that you can talk about that is memorable for you? Because I'm sure there's plenty that you can't.
Yeah. I mean, we've had so much fun up there. I mean, they do TV taping at we do it at Disney MGM or Universal Studios, and that would involve they would rent out the whole. It was a Marriott Residence Inn right there on Sand Lake Road in I Drive. So they would have 100+ crew, the boys, and it was almost like a family reunion. You'd have Colonel Parker there he'd have a case of Natty Light there and a cooler sitting by the pool holding court and just telling stories and, of course, playing gin. And just the cast of characters. I remember when Public Enemy came in the first night, they stole the motel van, wrecked it. Eric almost fired him. I mean, this is their first night in the territory. Poor Teddy. Teddy Petty was the nicest, just straight up guy, real family man. And Johnny Grunge was just a wild man. Also just a tremendous guy. And, the people, Bobby Eaton, the time we put Pee Wee, Randy Anderson, who's unfortunately gone as well. He would call himself America's referee. He took the pig head. They had a pig roast one night, to welcome us back. A guy named Herb Abrams ran the hotel, and he always loved it because it was great business for him. And Pee Wee took the pig's head from the spit, from the, they roasted the whole hog for us. Just a great, great, great time. And he put it in Bobby Eaton's bed and put it under. Bobby was scared of anything. It was the funniest thing in the world. And he would get this strength of like the Steiner brothers. He threw the Steiner brothers off him. They were trying to hold him down, and he hated being held down and like cover his mouth. And the Steiner brothers, Scott and Rick, and this is in their heyday, he threw those two off like they were fifth grade. It was hilarious. So Pee Wee put that pig in his bed just like Godfather. Bobby gets in bed, screams, almost ran through the door. Oh my God. It was that kind of fun. It was pretty innocent fun there. And Baja Beach Club was there, so we'd go there all the time. And I remember there was a place where they had all you could eat lobster. Barbarian ate like 18 lobsters, something just insane. So it was a lot of really, really good camaraderie. And a lot of the guys would stay at my house in Tampa because having grown up, working and owning bars in Tampa, and, I guess pretty much knew everybody in the industry. So like Chavo, Ray, Disco, Kidman, all the younger guys would all stay over there, and we would just go out now. And if we didn't have TV the next day, I mean, yeah, you can imagine. I mean, it was, it was good times. And then forget it when Flair would come over and we'd go hit Ebor and oh God. And now he lives here. Fortunately,
and he's still partying hard.
Like you've never seen. He'll be 75 this weekend. And
he's got his own weed now.
Pardon?
Did you think at 75 he'd be releasing his own weed?
How funny is that? And he's never, myself out, I've never even tried it. And he was never a drug guy, always a drinker, never a drug guy. And he's 75, getting stoned out of his mind with Mike Tyson. It's hilarious. He's something else, I'll tell you. 25-year-old bartenders, and he's just, I've never seen anything like it. Never. I don't know where he gets his energy from. He's, like Arn used to say, Chief, he's an alien, and he really is. His all his health stuff comes back great. The doctor says, he's like nothing I've ever seen. Truly living his gimmick. Truly.
You're on mute there, Jack.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry, I was saying it was all the cardio, the legendary cardio that.
You know what? Honest to God, I have to give that credence because he would never miss. I mean, if we're out till 4 or 5 in the morning, he's up at 6. Oh, I've got to do my cardio, kid. And he would be doing that Stairmaster at the highest level. And he'd try to wake up. I won't use the verbiage, but get lost, Beak. Oh, Arn would get so hot. Arn would fall asleep. He'd have a cheeseburger stuck in his chest. Oh, God. But just the most unbelievable times. They were just such good guys and good friends. And, when you grow up and you idolize guys and, look at them a certain way and you can just appreciate what they did in the business. Those guys went out and worked 40 minutes, Flair an hour. At the highest level, them, Tully, BW, against the greatest workers in our business. And it's just, and to ride the lightning bolt, like Dusty used to say, like the way they did it and burn the candle at both ends, it's unbelievable. And still going strong at 75, unbelievable.
Absolutely. Ibzan wants to know, and this is a question I bet you get a lot. Did you ever see Haku in action? Meng.
No. He is a very dear friend of mine. And honestly, the sweetest guy you've ever met in your life. I had him here last week. He stayed at my beach place because he just wanted him to come and go to some Angels games. He loves the California Angels, his family. So I got him tickets, for the Rays, and they came down and stayed here, and we just had a wonderful time. And literally the kindest man on earth. Like, if you're out, Joe, are you okay? I want to, just God, you can't say what a good human being is. Good father, good grandfather, good friend. And it never ceases to amaze me. No, I was never there. To answer your question, I'm sorry. No, I know all the stories verbatim from Rick retelling them and everybody else. But I don't understand why anybody would look at Haku and actually say, I want a piece of that guy. I don't get it. But I guess it's the alcohol, the liquid courage. Mm-hmm. But I remember the first time I worked with him and Barb, and I was so scared, because we used to call it the Vegematic, when he'd get you in the corner there and the quick hands, lightning fast. And I was like, oh my God. But light as if it couldn't have been better. And I remember, he tags it, boom, boom, does, stuff with Barb. I'm like, what happened to my spots? And I'm up on the top turnbuckle. Barb goes belly to belly. I go, no, I've never done it, Barb. Yes, Joe. It took me and threw me. And it felt like, 90 seconds, but it wasn't. It laid me perfectly flat. Couldn't have been safer. So after the match, and Barb and I would play gin every night. He called me his Sakana, which I named a restaurant after because I thought it was so funny. That meant fish in Japanese because he'd take me for $50 a night. He'd have a seat. Well, oh, Joe, look, I have a seat for you, after our match. So Barb goes, yes, Joe, boom, lays me flat. Couldn't have been easier, boom, 1, 2, 3, Go on the back. I said, oh, Barb, thanks. That was easy. Hey, Barb, whatever happened to those babyface spots? Drop kick, boom, stagger back, boom, shoot her in, whatever. He goes, oh, Joe, my English, not so good. Oh, God. Those guys, the best. But yeah, why anybody would ever want to attempt to engage in anything with those guys, crazy. Or they're suicidal.
Agreed. If you had to boil your career down to what you're most proud of, what you consider your biggest accomplishment, what would that be, Joe?
I guess, being able to work for one of the largest companies in the industry, I didn't achieve the goals that I really had, but probably the respect that I have for my peers and the friendships that I accrued through the years, I'd have to say. Because in terms of accolades, no, not really. Did I have the physical ability? Absolutely. Did I have the discipline? No, definitely not. But to this day, when I have the respect and the friendship of, you name it, that means a lot to me. That does. I think in how people think of you and how people, it's not how many people you call a friend, but how many people call you a friend. And that's what's important. So I've been blessed to have so many good friends, that I've met through and in the industry. And I think that's probably my proudest accomplishment, that I've got a good amount of respect in the business from the boys. And that means a lot to me.
And in terms of life now, Joe, at the moment, kind of what's like day-to-day life for you like at the moment? What are you up to these days?
Oof. Well, I've got properties here in Tampa, and I have a funding company called Florida Settlement Funding, where we do pre-settlement funding. Nothing really sexy, pretty boring stuff, but we get paid 50% of our money, guaranteed with an LOP from the attorney. So it's a very lucrative business. I've got an unbelievable partner again that I met through Rick, probably 6 or 7 years ago at his last wedding, and Rick. I remember we were in Mexico Beach at a place called The Pearl. Fabulous property. If you guys are ever in Florida, literally one of the most beautiful beaches and 5-star property. Tony Khan's there. I mean, just all the boys, Taker, everybody. And Rick made this wonderful, grandiose toast before that you're going to meet people that you're going to have as friends for life and friends for and sure enough, he was spot on. I meet my partner, Mark. His name's Mark Hardgrove, and his wife, Dina Trafficani's with me, my best friend, and just having a great time. And, Mark and I get to know each other better. We get back to Tampa, and, he owns a search engine optimization company. Huge money guy. Just a great guy. And, through the friendship with Rick, because Rick would talk about him for years to me and vice versa. So, the friendship grew much faster than it ever would have. And again, that's just how Rick is. That's one of his gifts. When he talks about you and shines a light on you, it's like you're the only person in the world, and, but that's one of the gifts I guess you get through your relationships, through your friendships in the business. And Mark and I are business partners for 4 years. The business is great and he couldn't be happier, nor I. He's become one of my very, very best friends. So, I think when you go through that and, and the business continues to give you blessings or however you want to call it, I guess, you got to be thankful for that, just and how people think of you and how you're treated. And I got to say, I'm the luckiest guy in the world.
Well, Joe, we've really appreciated your time today on this broadcast. But before we go, do you have any contacts to promote on social media or any upcoming projects that the fans should be aware of?
No, you know what? Listen, I'm flattered that the fans, find an interest in me. I truly am. I don't think my career is anything, to celebrate, but no, if God forbid you guys ever get an accident, you need funding or anything, we're the best at what we do. We've been in business 13 years. We're truly, truly blessed. But yeah, just, I'm flattered anytime everyone thinks positively about any of my career or contributions or what have you. And I appreciate all the kind words. Thank you very, very much.
Well, we do appreciate your time once again and have thoroughly enjoyed your recollection of what many consider, myself amongst them, the greatest period and the greatest company in wrestling history, and wish you all the best in your future endeavors, sir.
And likewise, boys, I think you guys do a great job with your show, and I had a tremendous time. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks
Well,
so
fans,
much, Joe.
that's it for this edition of the Cheap Heat Productions Wrestling Podcast with Joe Gomez. We will see you again very shortly. Take care, everybody.
Take care, boys. Thanks.